Bueno, muy buenos días. Um, so today I will be here to defend uh, our ongoing work on this paper, quantitative sentiment analysis and its impact on the financial market volatility of Ecopetrol. This is a paper that is being worked on by our colleagues Jose Gabriel Orozco, Carlos Eduardo Meneses Erazo, Fernando Castelo Sirvent, and myself, Juan Camilo Lega. So I'd like to start this with an introduction. Let me give you some context. Understanding and predicting financial market volatility is one of the most critical and challenging tasks for economists, analysts, and policymakers. In the case of emerging markets, volatility is not only higher, but more sensitive to global shocks and local structural fragilities. In Colombia, Ecopetrol, the country's largest energy company, plays a central role in both capital markets and macroeconomic stability. Its performance reflects a blend of oil price dynamics, regulatory decisions, investor sentiment, and a broader economic uncertainty that usually assails markets around our parts. So, what makes this an interesting research case is that Ecopetrol's asset prices and their fluctuations seem to be affected not only by its fundamentals, but also by some unobserved drivers that we may have. So we have this idea that things like news, investor perceptions, and macro financial uncertainty seem to affect the stock price. Our central research goal is therefore twofold. First, we aim to identify the latent variables that drive Ecopetrol's asset volatility. And second, we aim to build a more robust forecasting framework that integrates both traditional macroeconomic indicators and quantitative sentiment analysis, which is at the core of the things that we like to study. That is, the data extracted from news, textual reports, or other non-numerical sources. By doing this, we're not just building another volatility model, but we're trying to bridge two traditions. So number one, we're going to use that empirical rigor of macro financial modeling that is used by most analysts nowadays. And we'll also incorporate the behavioral richness of sentiment analysis. So for our methodology, we first applied principal component analysis that we call PCA to reduce the dimensionality of our macro data. This helped us concentrate most of the variability into a small number of components, making the modeling process more traceable and more easily interpretable. Second, we use k-means clustering to explore whether these components actually reveal different regimes or groups. So, for example, economic periods characterized by expansion and contraction or volatility spikes. So that is our way to measure whether our principal components were actually predicting something or it was just noise. Third, we modeled the dynamic relationships using both vector autoregressive analysis and Bayesian VAR models. These Bayesian VAR models gave us better conclusions using a reduced number of variables. They allow us to assess how these variables interact over time and how exogenous shocks propagate through the system. Fourth, we introduced the dynamic factor model, which helped us capture unobserved patterns that may drive multiple variables simultaneously, like, let's say, uncertainty, investor sentiment, or even oil price expectations. Finally, and critically, we fed these models with sentiment and uncertainty indexes extracted from news reports, both in Spanish and in English, using some entropy-based methods. This structure gave us a comprehensive, multidimensional view of volatility that blended observable trends with underlying behavioral signals. Some preliminary results that we received from our PCA let us observe that the first principal component by itself explained nearly 49% of the total variance in our macroeconomics data set. It correlated strongly with inflation, industrial production, and manufacturing indicators, suggesting it's a general economic activity factor. The next 5 components together explain more than 85% of the volatility, which gives us confidence that we could use this reduced set to model volatility without significant loss of information. When we applied K-means clustering to the PCA scores, we identified 3 distinct economic regimes in the data. These likely reflect different macro financial states, such as growth periods, crises, or post-shock recoveries. Although the silhouette score is moderate, the clustering results are stable and interpretable, which supports our plan to use regime switching behavior in further analysis. Some preliminary results for the VAR and the Bayesian VAR models that we can share. Next, we applied VAR and Bayesian VAR models. From the standard VAR, we observed strong autocorrelation within our principal components, particularly with that first PC1 component that we discussed, and a bidirectional relationship between the macroeconomic dimension and volatility-related components. Shocks in the system tend to persist across 5 to 7 time periods, indicating that market adjustments are not immediate. This aligns with prior literature suggesting slow diffusion of macro-financial news in emerging markets. When we move to the Bayesian VAR model, we gain even more insight. We find that uncertainty and Spanish language sentiment entropy have significant positive coefficients that when predicting Ecopetrol's adjusting closing price. Interestingly, this suggests that in certain cases, increased uncertainty may lead to increased demand for Ecopetrol's stock, potentially reflecting a safe haven effect in local portfolios. At the same time, other variables such as manufacturing activity, producer prices, long-term interest rates exhibit negative coefficients, reflecting investor aversion to inflationary or tightening signals. The dynamic factor model is still being fine-tuned, but initial results are encouraging. We identified 5 latent factors that capture common behaviors across variables. For instance, factor 1 tracks closely with COVID-related shocks and oil price crashes in 2020. Factor 2 appears to reflect media-driven uncertainty and sentiment patterns. Factors 3 and 4 capture local macro volatility, including exchange rate movements and production shifts. And factor 5 behaves more stably, likely corresponding to long-term rates or structural factors. Some key financial variables to keep in mind, like Ecopetrol's trading volume and adjusted price, show significant unexplained residuals, suggesting that while the model captures much, there is still room to improve, especially with nonlinear methods and volatility regime switching. Now for a quick word about the limitations and where we're heading next. As with any research progress, there are gaps we plan to address. We're currently expanding the data set, both in time and depth, for example, including more granular news sentiment data, possibly from social media or sector-specific publications. We're planning to test nonlinear models, particularly some stochastic volatility models, to better capture tail risks and asymmetric reactions. Diagnostic tests suggest some heteroskedasticity and autocorrelation in our residuals, which we're working to correct with model tuning and potential GARCH-type extensions. And finally, we will conduct cross-validation out of sample prediction to ensure that our model isn't just theoretically sound, but also practically useful. So in conclusion, what does this all tell us? Well, firstly, in emerging markets like Colombia, is not just a mechanical function of inflation and interest rates. Volatility is also shaped by how people feel, how they react to uncertainty, and how fast the sentiment spreads. Second, we believe this project offers a valuable intersection between behavioral finance, macroeconomic modeling, and data science. By integrating tools like PCA, Bayesian, VAR, and sentiment extraction, we can move toward a more nuanced understanding of volatility. And that is our paper. Thank you very much. We will be answering questions in the forum, and you may access the paper on our page as well. Thank you very much.